Effective teachers are not born. Effective teachers are made through our approach to integrating learning and assessment. We're hoping to help teachers, to give them more time by providing this scaffolding for them.
So we're not making magic here and giving them more time. We're actually helping them to use the time they have in a way that is effective, but also that this is the best way to improve learners' outcomes.
Absolutely. It's very simple. There's no big fancy theory about it. And really, it is about several key ingredients. And one of them is that teachers need to have clear objectives about where their learners are going towards. They need to be able to measure progress towards those objectives. They need to be able to provide their learners feedback on how well they're doing. And they need to then, based on that progress and feedback, decide on next steps.
Hello, my name is Luísa, and I'm here today with the brilliant Evelina Galaczi, the Director of Research English at Cambridge. We're here to talk about Cambridge's approach to integrating teaching, learning, and assessment. Welcome, Evelina, and thank you for being here with us. Can you help us to understand why Cambridge is well positioned to talk about this?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me, and hello to everybody. It's such a pleasure after such a brilliant introduction, especially to be here. So, why Cambridge? It's quite simple, really. Cambridge is trusted by millions of teachers, learners, and institutions every day for the last century almost. And so we understand teachers, we understand their challenges, and we're well placed to be able to help them in their profession.
So we can say that Cambridge is passionate about teaching, but is also passionate about teachers. We've been really trying to understand their challenges. And one of the main challenges they keep telling us about is time, how to get the most out of every moment of teaching. So how can this integrating learning and assessment approach help them with time?
That's actually a good way of putting it. Cambridge is passionate about teachers. That's very, very true. And yes, indeed, when we connect with teachers, when we talk to them, that consistently comes up that the time is an issue. Through our approach to integrating learning and assessment, so creating a framework, something structured and systematic, we're hoping to help teachers, to give them more time by providing this scaffolding for them, and they can use more of their time to spend on the things that really matter in education.
And getting the most out of their time in the classroom and out of their time with the students, would you say that that can also lead to making teaching more effective?
Absolutely. It can definitely lead to making teaching more effective, but I think it's worth keeping in mind that effective teachers are not born. Effective teachers are made. That means that they need good support, good training, good professional development. And if they have that, then it allows them to be at the top of their game, to be effective teachers. And what does that actually mean? What is effective teaching? It's very simple. There's no big fancy theory about it. And really, it is about several key ingredients. And one of them is that teachers need to have clear objectives about where their learners are going towards. They need to be able to measure progress towards those objectives. They need to be able to provide their learners feedback on how well they're doing. And they need to then, based on that progress and feedback, decide on next steps. So that's what it really boils down to, effective teaching.
So what you have laid out here are the 4 pillars, according to Cambridge, to what integrating learning and assessment looks like. Does this mean more work for the teachers?
Good question. It doesn't. We really believe that this doesn't lead to more work, because what we're finding through this approach, and it's been very well received by teachers, by the way, is that it raises their awareness of what is important. So it can cut through some of the noise, and they understand what is important. So that's what they can focus on. And their effort and time and energy becomes better used in that, better focused on those important things.
So we're not making magic here and giving them more time. We're actually helping them to use the time they have in a way that is effective. But also what we're saying is that this is the best way to improve learners' outcomes.
Absolutely.
Which is the objective of all the teachers.
Exactly. It's not magic. That's absolutely true. And it is what teachers do on a regular basis. It's what good, experienced teachers do anyway. So this is not something that nobody has thought about before, but we're helping them, again, focus on what matters. We're raising their awareness of these important things, and that in itself is very valuable. Just like if, for example, I try to, go running and improve myself as a runner, having information about how I'm doing and helping me decide what is the important things to focus on, nutrition and things like that, will help me be more efficient.
And you just touched on something really important, because as a runner or as a learner, this is also about your own individual progress. So can we say that by integrating learning and assessment, that learners can be more motivated too?
Yep, that's a really, really good point. Actually, I want to pick up on your point about learners themselves individually. Often when we think about progress, we tend to compare individuals against each other, which is not helpful. So we have these ranking tables and so on, completely not helpful. So this approach allows learners to understand their own progress for themselves as individuals, not measured against others. And that in itself increases motivation, as you said, but it also increases the sense of autonomy, the sense of ownership, the sense of I have agency here and I can regulate my learning better. And that is really, really, really important.
And we know that that is key in also not just English language learning, but also learning as part of a wider picture of each learner.
Absolutely. One of the key important ingredients of successful learning is that you're not always relying on that master, that teacher, that expert. Obviously, teachers are important, but you can't always, as a learner, rely on that. You need to develop self-regulated learning strategies. You need to develop a sense of autonomy. And so integrating learning and assessment and providing information on progress and feedback allows learners to do precisely that, which in turn makes the job of the teacher easier, actually, more effective.
Which is fantastic, and that's what we want.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. As we're talking here, not just about a one-off, this is not an intervention, something you do at the beginning. Because I remember when I started teaching many years ago, that I tended to think of assessment as something separate, as something you would stop the teaching and start the evaluation, the assessment. That's not what we're saying here.
Absolutely not. So there is that more, conservative, simplistic approach to learning and assessment, and that relationship that you learn, you stop, then you test. That is not what we're talking about. You're right. It is not linear. It's a cycle. But also it's not something you do on a one-off. You're not done by just applying these principles once or twice in your classroom. It's a constant cycle, and it's a mindset. So it's not just a framework we've given the teachers with these ingredients about objectives, progress, feedback, and next steps. It's a mindset in the teacher for them to be approaching teaching in this way on a regular basis all the time.
And it's a mindset that in many cases it's just being intentional about things they already do and getting the help they need.
Exactly. So it's about awareness raising. If you know as a teacher what you're doing already, what the main features of your practice are, then you're much better placed to understand where your strengths are and where your areas of development are, and to spend time on developing those strengths more and not losing them, but then increasing your strengths in the other areas.
And we know that teachers, as you said at the beginning, are fundamental. Like we know that this, as Cambridge, we can say that a teacher is the most important factor in the success. And if we're helping the teacher, we're also helping the learners to be successful.
Absolutely. The two are connected. You cannot separate them. They're part of an ecosystem, really. And if one element of that ecosystem, which is the classroom, let's say, or the school, if one element of that ecosystem changes for the better, it improves everything else in the ecosystem. So there's a connection between teachers and learners that is fundamental, that is very important. And if one improves, then the other one does as well.
Another element of this ecosystem potentially are educational leaders, right? what is the role they can play here in designing the curriculum in the way that allows for this approach?
It's very important to not lose sight of this other important element of the ecosystem, as you said, which is the educational leaders. Yes, they're critically important because they set the broader picture. They influence the approach, the policy in the school, the policy in the country even. And that means that they have more influence on curriculum. And that is an important element of this, because a teacher can make a lot of changes at the micro level in their classroom. But if they're not aligned with the macro curriculum decisions, then there's a disjoint there. So educational leaders, if they understand the importance of integrating learning and assessment, they have some influence on ensuring that the curriculum that is followed is in tune and in line with this important approach to learning.
Yes, that is really, really important. And the other element, I would say, from this ecosystem that we haven't talked until now is parents.
Yeah.
And teachers many times tell us also that they are challenged by parents' expectations and they want to show evidence of progress. So how can this approach help?
That's exactly it. So parents want to know that their children are learning. They want to know that the children are happy, that the children are doing well in school. Teachers are very busy. As we said, time is not something that teachers have a lot of. Teachers also have mixed ability classes, so it's difficult to provide evidence or provide data information about every single learner. But this approach allows them to focus much more on the individuals, because they know what to look for and they know the importance of feedback and progress measurement, and that in turn can be information giving back to the parents. So it's something that teachers are collecting on a regular basis for their own teaching, and that can then double as information that can be provided to parents to assure them that their child is doing well.
And we're increasing learners' autonomy, which also will mean that the learner is also taking responsibility for their own journey.
Exactly. And actually, if learners are motivated, and we know that they are, research shows that if learners have more awareness of their strengths and weaknesses, of their objectives, where they want to get to, and how they're progressing, that increases motivation. And if they're more motivated, they're also more willing to share their experience at home. So even my sons, grumpy teenagers, if they're engaged in their classes and they know what's happening and what they did well, they talk to me about it.
Yes.
So it's part of that experience.
And there is something here also about knowing the destination, right? Yes. If you don't know where you're going, you will never get there. And we're providing this roadmap for learners, for teachers, and for educational leaders and parents to understand what's happening inside the classroom.
Exactly. A roadmap is a really, really good image, actually. That's what integrated learning and assessment is. It's about identifying the objectives, which really is where in the map do you want to be? And that'll be different for different learners. It's, different places in the map. And then how are you working towards where you want to be in that map? Understanding whether you've taken the most direct route or whether you've gotten lost a little bit in that journey. That again is important. So the map is a brilliant image for that, brilliant metaphor. Yeah.
So if I'm a teacher and I want to start tomorrow implementing an integrated learning and assessment approach, where do I start?
We have a lot of resources on cambridge.org/ILA. So that's a dedicated page on our website. There are resources there, such as an online course on ILA, but there's also an ILA paper, and I would recommend teachers to look at that paper. And there is a very, very good quiz there, and that quiz takes them through the 4 elements of ILA, which is objectives, progress, feedback, and deciding on next steps. And it provides statements for them to evaluate their own approach to ILA. And by doing that, they can evaluate their own map of ILA, where they are, and they can decide on their own objectives or where they want to be. And that would be a brilliant starting point to then dip into the rest of the paper and the other resources on our website.
That's fantastic. And I think this is the key message is we're all in this journey. And this is not about where we are in the moment. It's just understanding where we want to get to and really understanding that Cambridge is here to support them.
Absolutely. This is not something Cambridge is doing for teachers and just throwing out a few papers, and leaving them alone. We are all in this together.
Yeah.
And that's actually why Cambridge is trusted by teachers because we passionately care about improving their life and their professional development.
And we see how every day we have teachers that trust us and that they help us to be better too. So we are also in this together with them, and they
That's
help
very
us.
true. That's very true. That's right. It is two-way. They help us to become better as well. That's very true. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Evelina. This was fantastic.
Luísa,
as
thank
always.
you.
Cambridge is where your world grows.